Martin Savage will continue to check in with you. Joining me now is former LAPD officer David Klinger. He's also a criminologist, CNN law enforcement analyst, and former president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, Cedric Alexander, CNN political commentator Van Jones, and former federal prosecutor Laura Coates. David, let me start with you. In the video that the family of Mr. Scott has released, we don't see the actual shots or even a gun with this cell phone video. For the first time, we are able to hear the officers repeatedly, saying, "Put down the gun." You hear them shouting about dropping the gun. And it's important to note that a loaded gun was, according to police, recovered from the scene. What do you see in this video? What stands out to you? Because the wife, should also point out, is saying that he does not have a gun in this video.
Start out with the wife's statement. That's really irrelevant to the police officers in terms of what they're seeing, if they're seeing something different. If they've already determined that he's got a gun by seeing one, then what she says, they've got better information. Now, in another situation, perhaps, where the officers don't know what's going on, they can't see where his hands might be, and she's saying he doesn't have a gun, that would be something that they'd have to put into their thought cycle. One of the other things that really struck me was the amount of time that passed between when the video started and the shots were fired, and as your reporter mentioned, the multiple commands to drop the gun. And so this wasn't one of those situations that happened very, very rapidly. This was one that took a little bit of time to build up. And another thing that is interesting to me that I don't quite understand yet is how it is that the suspect traversed the area from the vehicle that he was apparently sitting in to the point where he fell. And so that took a few seconds, and we don't really know what was going on at that point because, as you noted earlier, the camera is being jostled. And so it's really difficult to assess. What I would say is there are still a huge number of questions. Why were the officers there? Why did they deploy in the locations that they deployed? Why is it that one officer said something about getting a baton? The wife said something about don't let him break the windows. So I'm trying to understand, do they have a tactical plan to try to extract him? So there's a lot of questions that are unanswered, and I think that will come when we have access to the investigative case file with the radio broadcasts in all likelihood, and then the officer's statements.
Right. Cedric, I mean, you also hear the wife saying in the last moment to her husband, I think she says, "Keith, don't do it." I'm wondering what you see in this. I mean, everybody sort of sees things differently. I'm wondering what stands out to you.
Well, that is very true, Anderson. Everyone does see things a little differently in this case. And I don't know who she's talking to when she makes that statement, but here's something I need to be very clear about in this. This video that we're looking at and been viewing all day is a piece of the puzzle. What's going to be interesting during the course of this investigation is also to see the video footage that the city or the police department has possession of. We have to take all this footage, put it together, couple that with officer statements, witness statements, any other footage that may be out there that we are not aware of. You got to look at the physical evidence on the scene, the forensics. All this is going to come together and really tell a story as to what occurred, when, where, and how. And in this particular video, I'll tell you what does stick out to me here, Anderson, is that none of us on this side of that video can see a gun. So that doesn't mean it was not one there. It's just that if we're looking for one, this video doesn't give us that. But maybe another piece of footage somewhere may be able to do so.
Van, I mean, if the officers were able to hear Scott's wife, and we don't really know that all of the officers could hear her, once they know that there was a possible brain injury and he had taken medication, I'm wondering, should that have affected the situation at all? There's also the question of the still photo where you see some sort of an object in the foreground. I couldn't identify it as a gun, could have been a glove. I don't know what it was, but in the video it doesn't seem to show up. What do you make of what you're seeing?
Well, first of all, it's just heartbreaking to see this stuff over and over again, and I hope that we just this doesn't become a new normal. We just get desensitized. Here's someone who lost their life. Here's a wife, pleading, and we almost just see that as something just to be clinical about. It's a horrible tragedy. The reality is this video cuts both ways. It's just this is a piece of a puzzle. What I want to speak to is that when you have people who have traumatic brain injuries, you're saying TBI, when you have people with mental health issues, law enforcement needs to be better trained to talk people down rather than shoot them down. All too often, people who have mental health issues wind up on the wrong end of these incidents, and police, go into a particular pattern with it. Verbal command, verbal command, verbal command. The command's not working, then they start moving up the ladder of force, often to the point of using deadly force when someone else from the neighborhood might be able to talk that person down. So that could be an issue here. We just don't know if there's really a gun or not. And let me just say one last thing. For a normal person, if you say, well, listen, the cops are saying drop the gun, there must be a gun. There could be a misunderstanding. Then they say, well, they found a gun. What you have to remember is in the African American community, the idea of a throw-down gun is just as normal as anything else. When a shooting goes wrong, there are some elements of law enforcement who, through the years, have carried what they call a throwdown gun, a gun you drop at the scene. And that is such something that people are familiar with. Just the fact that police say that there was a gun there does not mean to a lot of people that there was a gun there. So we need much more information than we're getting. And them hiding the actual video is not helping. But this video could cut either way. We need more facts.
Laura, I just want to get your perspective. The sheriff said that the video he has seen didn't show anything definitive about whether there was a gun being pointed. This new video doesn't seem to change that, and we don't even see Mr. Scott. What about this video raises questions for you or answers questions?
Well, as a prosecutor, I look at this and say, look, this is very emotional and very provocative, but just the facts here. What don't I see? And what is going to be my inquiry? And as a prosecutor, I'm looking at it and saying, if there was a gun there, he may have been entitled to have a gun in this particular state. I know he had a record and may not have been able to lawfully have one, but having a gun is not the end of a prosecutor's inquiry. It's whether or not these officers felt as though their lives were threatened and whether he was going to use lethal force against them to either justify a use of excessive force or use of force on them or otherwise. Just because he had a gun, whether it's on the ground or on his person, does not automatically make me think that he used it in a way that was going to be brandished to threaten them. That's what neither the video that we're seeing right now shows us or the one that we have not seen but has been described by the sheriff. And that's where my eyewitness testimony comes in. And that's why I don't really understand, Anderson, why the video from the officers has not been released. These are but static moments in time that are incomplete and inconclusive, but would help us to figure out whether or not that the bigger picture is.
Well, let me just try to answer that because I asked David that last night, and his explanation, I want to put it to you and see what you have to say about it from a legal standpoint, is that with an investigation that's going on, you don't want witnesses being affected by seeing a video, changing their story, or in some way being impacted by seeing this video and having a video out there. The same with officers. You don't necessarily want them seeing this video and changing their stories. What do you make of that, Laura?
Well, to the first point, the chief of police has already come out and given a press conference where he describes with specificity what he sees in the video. So having us have the opportunity to actually confirm that what he's described is what indeed was seen on the video, to me it seems a little bit odd. If I've already been told what it is, can I see it for myself? That's number one. Number two, yes, it's true that prosecutors routinely will tell officers, look, let's not open the investigation up completely. Let's not have all of our evidence there when we're trying to ascertain the suspect and what they know. But in this situation, it's being used in a hypocritical way for the reason you just said, Anderson. The officers say they do not want to compromise the investigation by having witnesses recall the video and not recall the actual incident. Yet officers are allowed to have a uniformity of memory when it comes to having watched the video over and over again and decide how best to proceed. And it cannot be used as a double-edged sword when it comes to the justice system.
We got to take a quick break. We're going to hear more from our panel coming up. Just ahead, I'll speak with the public defender.